I'm going to tell you a funny story. Funny for you, not for me. I was at a youth event a few years ago, and we were just doing a fun event downstairs in the basement with a bunch of the teens and some of my helpers, some of my other young adult leaders were helping. And we had just done an activity, and so I was sitting on the floor, just quietly catching my breath, and one of the leaders decided to take the saran wrap that had been over top of the cake, and so had frosting all over it. They thought it would be a very good idea to take that saran wrap covered in frosting and wrap it around my face. And so they came up behind me, making sure the frosting was on the side facing my face, and went and ran away laughing and screaming. I want to tell you, it took every ounce of grace and self-control and restraint I had not to chase after them and rip their head off. It was just one of those events where somebody did something to me that pushed me over the limit, and I just so wanted to get back at them. They did something that really annoyed me, that really bothered me, that I hated, and they did it anyways, and I just wanted them to hurt. Now, I didn't do anything in retaliation, just in case you're wondering. Mainly because I couldn't think of anything that would be of equivalent terribleness to do to them. And so I just kind of gave up. But have you ever been in a situation like that? You ever been in a situation where somebody has done something to you and you just get this swell of emotion inside of you that makes you want to just scream and yell and make them feel the pain? This might be maybe you've dealt with this in your family. I know, highly unlikely that you've ever dealt with this in your family. But there's somebody in your family, or it's happened before, where they do something or they say something that seems to consistently just push you over the edge. They betray you, or they do something that's truly inconsiderate, or they just do something to bug you. Maybe it's a person in your family that consistently goes out of their way to hurt you. It might not be your direct family. Maybe it's your in-laws. Well, there. I just made everything possible there. And you're dealing with your in-laws or even somebody in your family, and they just do something or say something to you that just hurts you in such a way that you just want to snap at them. And maybe you do. Maybe you just snap at them right there. You want them to stop what they're doing. You want them to feel your pain. You want them to regret ever having done that to you. And it might not be one emotion. This might be something that lingers. But every time you see this person, you're just, I just want them to feel the humiliation that I felt. This can come up quite easily when you're at work or at school. Wherever it is that you spend most of your time during most of your days, you're around your peers. And you're interacting with people, and they constantly give you the bad assignments. They constantly ignore you and give you the messy situations. They don't give you help. They always turn everything on you. They blame you when things go wrong, even though it's not your fault. There's backstabbing and lying going on, and all you don't know what to do. You don't know how to get even, but you just have this rage inside of you that says, I want you to stop this, and I want you to feel how bad it is to have this done to you. How would you like it if somebody treated you this way? And it swells up. It can be something as simple as is dealing with strangers too. When you go to the store and somebody cuts in front of you. You're waiting in line at a government office, and you've been waiting there for probably 3 hours because it's a government office. And somebody just walks in the door and butts right in front of you. You don't know them. You've never seen them. But you know one thing about them. You hate them. It can be as simple as you're driving and somebody cuts you off and you just like, that person's going to hell, I know it. No way it can be that mean. It can be as simple as you're in the store and somebody gives you a dirty look. And you just want them to feel what you feel. Now, this reveals a couple things about us. The first thing it reveals to us is that we are very sensitive. The other thing it reveals about us is we are obsessed with revenge. We are obsessed with getting even. If you got your Bibles, turn to Matthew chapter 5. This is part of the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5, starting at verse 38. Jesus is taking the time to speak to a large crowd of people, and he's given many lessons during this sermon. And I think this is fitting for today because sometimes we misunderstand this passage, especially coming up on Remembrance Day. There are some people that really misunderstand this passage how it relates to this. Matthew 5, starting at verse 38, says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the evil one. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your shirt, let him have your coat as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you." Now, I say it's fitting because this passage is often misunderstood or taken outside of what Jesus was talking about. I want to deal with a couple objections to this passage first off. Very plainly, this passage is not about accepting abuse. When Jesus says, if someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek, he is not saying, if you are at home and your husband is beating you, accept it, enjoy it, get used to it, and just let him do it. That is not what he's saying at all. If you are in the situation where there's some kind of emotional or physical abuse going on, that is not what this passage is dealing with. He is dealing with the situation, and you see it in this first verse. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So if you are in the situation where you are willing and able to get even, you have the ability and the power to get even. That's the situation he's dealing with. When you're in an abusive situation or abusive relationship or some kind of terrible attack like that, you're not in the position to get even. You are bound by fear, you are being violated, and you would be happy if it just stopped. He's not talking about that situation. There is a whole nother way to deal with that. There's a whole nother biblical mandate for what we're supposed to do in those situations. What he is talking about here is if you are in the situation where you are free and able to get revenge, you need to do something different. He's saying, instead of responding with revenge, you need to respond with grace. But he's not talking about abuse. He's talking about people that are secure enough that they can take a hit and not be completely destroyed by it. Now that can be different situations, and I don't open this up and say that it's not about abuse to give you an excuse to say, well, he was abusing me, so I had a right to punch him in the face. No. If you are seriously in the position where you are bound by fear and violence, there's a whole nother that is totally something separate from this. But if you're in the situation where somebody does something to you, and you now have the choice to react, you have a decision to make about how you will respond, that's what the situation has to deal with. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about you being in a place where you now make a decision about how you will react, not how will you survive or how will you get out of it. And so with that, I want to assure you that Jesus isn't talking about being a coward either. Now, what I mean by that is Jesus isn't saying that when something evil happens, we're just supposed to be afraid of it, hide from it, and let it happen. I believe Jesus stated it very clearly, and I believe the entire biblical narrative, all of Scripture, would support this thought, that if somebody is exacting evil on somebody else, it is our responsibility to stop it. It is our necessary responsibility to protect those that nobody else is protecting. If you see somebody on the street who's being attacked, you are not supposed to just allow the evil person to continue and let the evil have its way. That is not what Jesus is saying. Anyone that tells you that is completely insane. He's talking about you having a personal issue with somebody else where you can make a decision about how you will react and respond to the situation that's already concluded. He's not talking about somebody abusing a child and you're just supposed to let it happen, or you walking by someone being raped and you just letting it happen, or you see an entire race of people being exterminated and you're just supposed to let the evil have its way. That is not what he's saying here. That is not what Jesus is talking about. And anybody that says that, I think they're totally nuts. And so this isn't about accepting abuse, and I don't believe this is about being a coward and just shying away from stopping evil. What he's saying is that in your life, when people attack and offend you, you need to respond not with revenge, but with grace. And it's very wise. Jesus is tapping into a human issue there that is really quite incredible. Because most people react with the last action that was done to them. And so if I make a joke to somebody, they will typically make a joke back. If I say something mean to somebody, they will typically say something mean back. If I say something nice to somebody, they'll probably laugh and just walk away. I mean, they'll probably say something nice back to me. And so typically, people respond with how they're treated. And so if you're attacked, you want to attack back. If you're offended, you want to offend back. If someone attacks and hurts you, you want to attack and hurt them. You want to make things even. And what Jesus is saying is don't respond with revenge, but respond with grace. He's actually saying change the cycle. He is giving you the power and the calling to change the cycle. So when somebody attacks you and you respond with grace, maybe they'll respond back with grace. When they say something mean to you and you say something nice to them, you are giving them the opportunity to stop the cycle of violence and respond with something kind instead. He is giving you the power and the permission and the command to change an evil cycle. And so he's not talking about abuse, and he's not talking about cowardice. He's talking about how do you actually deal with the problem. And in your lives, he says, respond with grace, not revenge. So this means, practically, in your family situations, whether it's your blood relatives or your in-laws or whatever it is, instead of trying to get even and make them feel your pain, you need to be so full of the love of Christ that their attacks really don't affect you. They just seem small. They're there, and you'll probably want to talk to them and figure it out and have some conflict resolution. You're going to want to talk through it all and deal with whatever issue is there. But you need to be so full of the love of Christ that this issue that seems this big and that controls you becomes this little tiny thing that doesn't even matter. And you need to respond not with getting even, but almost pretending like it didn't happen and loving them as if it didn't. And if that means being open to them doing it again, it becomes less of an issue, and it gives you an opportunity to serve them and love them. And if that's how you respond, it gives them the opportunity to do the same to you. When dealing with your peers, either at work or at school, it means that you don't work behind the scenes to get your boss on your side so that you can ruin their reputation and you can make sure they get the bad work schedule, and so that the teacher yells at them and knows what they're doing, and so you get even so that they can feel your pain. It actually means that you suck it up and you go out of your way to be kind to them even though they don't deserve it. You make it a point to not react with revenge, but to react with grace, giving them the benefit of the doubt, giving them help when they need it, continuing to offer to be kind and be nice to them and support them even though they don't deserve it, because that is exactly what Christ has done for us. And when dealing with strangers, people that you've never met before, you've never interacted with, or people that you barely know, and you're offended by them, don't respond with this attitude of revenge. Respond with grace. Don't give them the dirty look back. Say something nice to them. Give them your spot and talk to them as if they haven't done anything wrong. Smile at them. Because in doing so, you may change their cycle. And in a day when they're frustrated and confused and angry and rushed, and so they've got a short temper, and you respond with something other than revenge, you are actually giving them the opportunity to respond again with grace and change the cycle that they've been on the rest of the day. And by doing so, you might actually give hope to them in the middle of the day when they feel like they've got none. You might change their attitude just enough that they don't get themselves in trouble later on in the day. and you really don't know what's going on in people's lives, maybe that little bit of hope will actually save a life. And so this passage isn't about how you're supposed to accept abuse or be a coward, or that how the men and women who fought and died to protect us is contrary to what Jesus says. No, that's not what this passage is about. This passage is about you. This is about how we need to stop responding with revenge and start responding with grace.